There's one other item I want to touch on before we go, and that has to do with the deep state. We talked about the deep state for a long time, but now it's a cliche. You hear it all the time, and people are starting to sort it out. And the deep state, of course, to me, are the people who behind the scenes run America. You know, the financial people, the military people, the media people, the educational system. And philosophically, they seem to get along together, and they all put the one effort on to control Congress and always end up with the same policies. And that's why I've always argued, Republicans or Democrats, it doesn't matter. The deep state is all that counts. A lot, including myself, was hopeful there would be a change, especially, you know, with Trump having a different attitude about Russia, that the deep state, you know, would be more exposed. It seems like they're participating maybe even more. So I don't know. I haven't come down with a final conclusion on Trump, on whether he's just part of it or he's being coerced. Because if it is true that the neoconservatives and military-industrial complex, all these groups I mentioned, if they're not part of running America, why are the people getting appointed so close to them? And the foreign policy doesn't change. You know, of course, you know, always hope that Trump's going to be strong against the Federal Reserve and had an audit and all, but right now I don't think that's high on their agenda. I think the main thing they're looking to in the financial section is when the downturn occurs, what's the Fed going to do to keep the economy going? So this whole thing about where Trump is on the deep state and where the deep state is on how much control they have, or is it a unified organization?
Well, I think, you know, our friend Mike Lofgren, who really popularized the term deep state in a couple of books that he wrote since he left the congressional staff, what he would say, and I think you'd agree with this, is Trump is part of the deep state. He's part of a segment of the deep state which is at war with another segment of the deep state. It sounds very esoteric and maybe even conspiratorial. But Mike points out that this is an open conspiracy. This is not some secret group. They're out in the open, and you know who they are. But he would say these are two factions that are at war with each other.
And I think that's evident when you look at the arguments between the CIA and the intelligence agency and, you know, who's on whose side. And if Trump's the president, isn't he in charge now? But it looks like getting in charge of a monster like that, you know, is so pervasive and it's so worldwide that and I've always assumed there were factions, rogue elements of the CIA, because I think the evidence is rather clear. The CIA was involved in many, many bad things, and in particular the assassination of Kennedy. But it wasn't an official policy of the CIA that's written in the books and into the record. You know, it was this element over there, and even some former members of the CIA were probably involved. But so it isn't a neat little package, and I think that we'll find out more about this as time goes on, about exactly what these appointments means, how powerful the neoconservatives will be. Right now, they're winning a whole lot, and the biggest concern I have, of course, is the fact that this might weaken Trump's position, that we ought to at least be talking to the Russians. And yet, at the same time, I'm concerned about the policy being quite different when it comes to the Chinese, by us moving our Navy around there, show that we're tough, and if you mess with us, don't you remember we have a lot of nuclear weapons? So we have a ways to go, and this is a serious thing, because there are too much likelihood of accidents happen and false flags and stir up trouble, and these wars and these efforts expand much more quickly than our government can even control. But I think